Hey, what's up guys? I'm Chex. I'm here with Jill and Barry. If you hear the birds in the background, it's the cat TV with Cat. Today we're going to be talking about kind of a difficult topic, whether they should remake the Resident Evil 1 remake again. If you're new to the channel, which most people are, please hit the like and subscribe button to help me out. This is a bit of a difficult topic, and I kind of do a negative and then a positive video when it comes to Resident Evil. This one's kind of going to be the negative one, unfortunately. I don't believe, long story short, I don't believe that they should remake Resident Evil 1 again. And I'm going to go ahead and show the intro to this before we really get too deep into the game. So I'm going to show the intro for Resident Evil 1 real quick first.
Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone situated in northwest Raccoon City, where we are searching for the helicopter of our compatriots, Bravo Team, who disappeared during the middle of their mission.
Haven't found it yet?
No, not yet, Brad. Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City. There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. The Bravo Team was sent in to investigate, but we lost contact.
Look, Chris.
Bravo Team's helicopter was a derelict. Save for the remaining body of Kevin. We continued our search for the other members, and it turned into a nightmare. Chris, this way! Damn it! Make for that mansion!
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Barry, and myself. We don't know where Chris is.
What is this place?
Not quite your ordinary house, that's for sure.
Hey, Wesker, where's Chris?
Jill, no! You don't want to go back out there.
But we've got to find...
What was that?
Chris?
No.
Jill, go and investigate.
I'm going with her. Chris and I go back a long way.
All right. You two go. I'll secure this area.
Stay sharp. dining room. I think you'd better take a look at this.
What is it?
Blood. Jill, see if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this. Let's just hope it's not Chris's. What is it?
Look out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of it! What the hell is this thing?
I found Kenneth killed by this thing. Let's report this to Wesker.
Wesker! Jill, help me look for him. Let's not leave this hall.
Good idea.
Now that we've gotten that out of the way, as I kind of walk around the main hall here with Barry. So as you saw in the intro, there's a lot of things that wouldn't quite make sense for a modern game.
Any luck, Jill?
No, nothing.
We'll talk about some of that here in a moment here.
Figure it out.
Same here.
Chris, and now Wesker.
There's not much we can do. We can search for him separately. I'll investigate the dining room again.
Okay then, I'll try the door on the other side.
This mansion is gigantic. We could easily get lost. Let's start from the first floor.
Okay.
Oh, I almost forgot. It's a lockpick. You'd make better use of it.
Thanks. I may need it.
Listen, if something happens, let's meet up in this hall. Got it?
Okay.
Now that Barry's gone, we can start talking crap about him. So there's actually a lot of things that I have to say about this game just from the intro by itself. A lot of other people that have started to play this game for the first time recently have picked up on a lot of the same things. I just watched somebody else's video. I don't remember his name right now. If I can find it, I'll flash it on the screen like right over here. And when I was watching his video, he pointed out a lot of things that like didn't totally make sense. And it's been a while since I played the remake of this game. I did play the original not too long ago as I did my marathon. But even then, I kind of overlooked a lot of things that like didn't really make sense just out of pure nostalgia. So for starters, when they get attacked by the dogs, Brad's in a helicopter and he just takes off, just leaving everybody behind. Which really doesn't even make sense because the dogs I don't believe are attacking him. And if they were, he could have been inside of an enclosed helicopter. He would be safe. We see him in Resident Evil 3. He's totally, uninfected until he gets eaten. But you know, he's fine. That's just kind of one of the first weird things that you see, and then once you start to watch it more, it starts to get weirder and weirder. So there are also two really important things basically that happen in the intro that make no sense and kind of unfoil everything right out the gate. And to just kind of cover everything, this also ties into all the other remakes slash reimaginings that they're now doing as reimaginings a little bit more. So in the beginning, if you play as Jill, if you notice, Chris just disappears. He's running right alongside you guys in the beginning. You all are running right up to the door of the mansion, and then somehow Chris just disappears because you don't pick him as like a player character. As the story goes, it says that basically Chris is locked up in the basement, in the cellar of, you know, the mansion, and Wesker at some point captured him and put him there, basically like right at the beginning. The gunshot that goes off, as you know, I basically showed here, was not from Chris, it's from Ricardo. I think that was his name. The guy that's getting eaten by the first zombie that you see. That's the gunshot that he sets off, leading you guys over to him basically to set off those events. Chris is just gone. Somehow he's captured by Albert Wesker, who is with us in the main hall of the mansion when we enter it, making no sense about how we captured him. Now you could say, well, they could add Umbrella employees, soldiers, whatever, and they could capture him, blah, blah, blah. Well, they didn't exist here. Everyone's supposedly dead in the story. The problem with remaking this game at this point would be that you would have to, it would take so much reimagining and redoing. They should have, frankly, originally started with this game. That would have changed everything for them. They could have done everything that they wanted to kind of test and ease into with this game, and then gone from there. Resident Evil 2 and 3 should have been the ones that they really like balled out with instead of Resident Evil 4, quite frankly. I really appreciate Jake Balladino using the title The Real Resident Evil 4 when he was talking about Resident Evil Code Veronica remake, because it really is the true Resident Evil 4. As I've said in other videos, Resident Evil 4 was the one really just completely divulged. Now, a lot of arguments can be made to say that Code Veronica is where it started to really divulge, but it still was very hardcore within the science fiction realm, and it still had the same, it had the Resident Evil Bible basically still in it. You know, it had the zombies, it had the monsters, it had everything that the original game still had continued through the series. It was still connected to everything that the original story had started. It's Claire's next step in her story, where she goes from Raccoon City. It's only supposed to take place a few months after the events of Raccoon City. She goes to Paris, gets captured at the Umbrella facility there, and then she's on the Rockford Island, where, you know, the rest of the story takes place. That really should have been Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 that we actually got, where you go to Spain and they're just like, yeah, that whole story's over and done with. We're doing this thing now. That's where they really messed up. And that's why I point that out so much. So I just want to say thank you, Jake Balladino, for using that title and basically, you know, talking about it in that kind of a framework. I also want to point out the Critical Gamer, who also talked about Resident Evil and said a lot of the same things that I'm basically saying here. That Resident Evil was very hardcore, a science fiction, sci-fi horror style game. We didn't have all this fantasy stuff. Code Veronica is the game that started to kind of add that in when they bring Wesker back from the dead. He has some superpowers, and Alexia is kind of like this mutant superhuman monster that can throw fire and things like that. That's where it started to get really anime and crazy for, you know, basically I have to admit, like, factually that is where it started. I love Code Veronica, but that's where a lot of problems slowly seeped in a little bit. It still held the foundation of Resident Evil, but it is kind of that intro point for that weird stuff where they just really took off with the later games. So unfortunately, that puts us in this really weird spot where if they had remade Resident Evil 1, they would have to change a lot of the story, a lot of the lore. Frankly, they would really have to start with Resident Evil 0. And then it would have to be Resident Evil 0 and 1 in one game. You essentially start as Rebecca with Billy on the train, and then as that ends, you get into the mansion, and then it, like, somehow the story changes, and then you see the events from the other team, you know, coming into the, you know, the entrance, the front entrance of the mansion. And if you really think about it, Resident Evil 4 is basically the length of what that game would be. because you would have such a long campaign where you're doing so many things. It actually probably would be longer than Resident Evil 4 if you're talking about like a first playthrough at least, because that is a lot of things that you would be doing, a lot of things that you would be going through. And I know that if they wanted to do it right, they would have to expand on each of those things a little bit as well to make them make more sense. Since the remakes, reimaginings, I use that very loosely. They haven't really done a whole lot with that. Since they're more grounded though in reality, it would be a lot harder for them to do this as a direct remake because of all the weird things that are kind of in these games. Going back to my point that I was talking about a little bit ago, where the intro has some very big problems though, two main ones. The second main problem is you run into the mansion with Barry and Wesker, who from this point forward are supposedly trying to kill all of STARS. So why did Albert Wesker save Chris and Jill and help get you into the mansion if he immediately captures Chris, supposedly, to then kill you guys? That just doesn't make any sense. He had every opportunity to just let you guys die, or to just take you out right then and there. But he doesn't, and for some reason it takes you into the facility. You could say it's to collect combat data, but he doesn't really do a whole lot of that. He's pretty much just roaming around on his own, trying to get rid of these guys. He's even using Barry to get it done, so he's not really collecting combat data with the monsters themselves. He's already collected that by all the people in the mansion getting eaten, turned, or, you know, whatever. Resident Evil 1's story is so campy, it only really worked back in its time. This is where the whole debate of it being outdated really comes into play. It's not just the gameplay. The gameplay alone is outdated. I'm not even going to get into that whole debate. A lot of people will still say tank controls are good, just get over it, get used to it. It is outdated, and that's why it keeps a lot of people from wanting to play these games now, while there is other modern games available to play. But the story is what really makes it a big problem, because the story is now, it's still just so disjointed. And Resident Evil 1 current remake does kind of already fall in line with everything. It works with everything. Like, that's the one thing that everybody does say that is correct, I will agree with. It does work. If they don't remake it again, it's fine. This will still continue to work. I don't know how long that stupid ad was going for, I'm sorry guys. But this will continue to work basically for a good while for the remakes. I don't know how it's going to fall into how well it works after Code Veronica comes out. I've got a video that I'm going to make soon that's going to talk about some theories and things for that. Things that I'm very excited about. I've got a lot of good things to say about it. I'm very excited for it. But quite frankly, I think they've finally decided to start really trying more things and really building upon the original Resident Evil story. And they finally figured out how to do it. And my big thing there is you finally fight Umbrella employees in Resident Evil 9. You don't do that in any of the other Resident Evil games. They haven't tried that yet until Resident Evil 9. They should have been doing that for quite some time. Quite frankly, when they reimagined Resident Evil 2, they should have made the true A and B scenarios. They should have not outsourced Resident Evil 3, and they should have fully fleshed out Resident Evil 3 by themselves. And they should have, in those games, they should have had you at some point dealing with some Umbrella soldiers. You should have been dealing with the USS a little bit. I'm not saying a lot. I don't want it to have turned into like Army of Two, Resident Evil, or whatever. But there should have been a little bit of that in those games. What they should have done, quite frankly, is they should have started with, like I said, Resident Evil 0-1. And then with Resident Evil 2 and 3, that's where they should have been really trying those other new things to kind of test how people felt about it and stuff. I know that would have been a really risky thing. They played it way too safe. That's my biggest issue with Capcom, is that they decided to play everything super safe with the remakes. That's why they chose to do Resident Evil 2 and 3 and then 4 for the remakes. That's why they didn't do Resident Evil 1. That's why they didn't until now choose to do Code Veronica. And that's why they're doing so much stuff that's going to be different with it. That's why they showed it right in the trailer too. We're going to see the USS soldiers, or at least, you know, them working with, I think it's HCF. You know, Albert Wesker's basically new organization. We get to see them finally in the game. We're going to be probably dealing with them and seeing more of that story and stuff. They just tried it too late. And I think that also is why they're calling it Veronica, because it starts with a V. V is the Roman numeral 5. If I remember right. Let me check. Okay, yes, I was correct. Let me just show you all this just to prove my point. So the crazy thing about that basically is that Capcom is saying that Resident Evil Code Veronica is now Resident Evil 5, instead of doing the Resident Evil 5 remake. They're not directly saying it, but that's basically what they're saying. It's just kind of like a wink wink for the people that can really catch it. Now, this is also where they, again, have the chance to really change things, because they are finally acknowledging this is where people are going to realize that there was another Umbrella base in France that was still active. There were still other places all over the world that were still active and doing their own thing. And this is exactly where Resident Evil should have gone after Resident Evil 3. This is exactly what Resident Evil 4 should have been, the continuation of the story where you're going after Umbrella, taking them down at different facilities and doing that. You could have had so many more cool outbreaks, so many cool monsters, so many more things where you're exploring different labs and you're seeing all these different abominations of monsters and experiments that, you know, Umbrella has been cooking up in different places all over the world. There is so much opportunity there that they had to explore, but instead they decided to drop the ball with 4 and go in a totally weird direction. I know if you made it this far, you're probably thinking this is supposed to be about Resident Evil 1. Well, this does tie into this because it proves the point that, like, all of this stuff should have started with 1. If they wanted to really solidify the story and get everything down pack and all that stuff, quite frankly, they never, I know I keep saying that a lot, they never should have made 7 and Village. They should have originally just started with remaking these games and going from there, reimagining the entire story to get something cohesive. People were so angry after 5 and 6 because they were so different and they were so action paced, and like they weren't, you know, Resident Evil survival horror games. They were more like military shooter games where you're running around doing all this like crazy stuff and, you know, blah blah blah. There wasn't a whole lot of the original survival horror feeling in there at all. You didn't feel scared. You weren't at any point really like fighting for your life. You didn't feel like you were really fighting against the odds. You felt like you were the odds. And then people don't want to admit it, but they pushed that even further with 7 and Village. Village literally ends with you like riding in a tank, fighting Magneto after you just got out of his war factory of robots. Like, I swear I say these same things almost every time I talk about Resident Evil. It's probably getting really old at this point. But it's true! If they had done this from the get-go, this would have saved the series. They would have been able to re-bring a new breath of air into it. It would have been tough for a lot of people. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of people, if they had made Resident Evil 4 and it was completely different, or if they just made Code Veronica and then called it 4, and then changed the whole rest of the story from there, and basically like 4, 5, 6 never existed, and we got like a whole new series where they actually stuck to the original story, there would be some people that would possibly be upset. But I think the true fans that actually love Resident Evil for what it originally was for so many years, I think they would have all been a lot happier. The loyal fan base would have been way happier with that than with what we're currently getting now. I know I'm in that boat. I would have been a lot happier with that. That's what I wanted when I first heard that they were remaking Resident Evil 2. That's what I thought they were going to do when they called it a reimagining. I was like, oh, okay, cool. They're reimagining the story. They're using this to basically fix everything that got all funky and didn't make sense over the years. Unfortunately, like, bit me in the ass pretty hard when they made Village, and, you know, that they just kept on chugging with that train, basically, but it is what it is now at this point. That's also why at this point I say that it's too late to remake the first Resident Evil at this point. There's no reason to. It wouldn't make any sense. There's no real good way to remake it at this point. There's no reason to. Since they didn't start there to begin with, it wouldn't really make sense to go back now to it. They didn't do everything properly to be able to fix all of the problems. They just kept making it worse, if anything. I hate to say, but yeah, that's basically my 2 cents on it. Don't get me wrong, I want a Resident Evil 1 remake. If they remade it in a new engine, you know, the new Resident Evil engine, and they did all that cool stuff, I bet it would be a really fun game I would probably buy it for sure, and, you know, I'd probably enjoy it, but at the same time, I would still have a lot of these same thoughts about it. No matter what they did, it would just be another log on the fire of an incohesive story that was never able to make sense after they lost the plot with 4. I will continue to play these games. I'm going to look forward to the remakes that they keep doing. I am excited for that. I do, in a way, I do hope that they remake the first Resident Evil. I hope they remake 5, maybe even 6 at some point. But, you know, if they drastically decide to change the story for the later games instead of starting with the original and like fixing all that stuff up, I'm gonna be even more upset, quite frankly, than, you know, whatever, because it's like it's just logs on the fire, logs on the fire. Thankfully, there's a new game called Ill coming out though next year that looks really, really good. I think it's basically gonna be the new Resident Evil. I'm gonna make a new video. I have a new video coming out very soon on that. I think I'm probably going to post that either in a couple days, or if I haven't already, I don't know. Please subscribe and you'll be able to find out. I know this was a tough one, but thank you for watching, guys. If you made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think, if they should remake the original game in the comments below. Let me know if you're happy with the story as it sits right now, or, you know, how you're feeling, if you agree with me, all that good stuff. Other than that, have a good one, guys. Bye.